The chair recognizes the gentleman from Cambria County, Representative Barbin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've sat here and listened to all the privileges that each side claims to have. The only privilege that no one's decided to talk about is the privilege for the people of Pennsylvania who elected us to hear both sides of the issue. Now, I voted for this motion to call the previous question, but it wasn't for the reason to stifle anybody's free speech right. If we decide in this body that we're going to stop, we're only going to enforce some rights. I believe strongly in the right of a person to be able to defend themselves without interference, and that's a constitutional provision. We have the same issue with freedom of speech. I'll be voting no on the motion. I'll be voting for the motion to adjourn because every citizen has the right to hear both sides of this issue. And if you're going to preclude that, then what you're basically saying is the right to bear arms is not as important as the right to free speech. Well, the right to free speech is what we all tell people we believe in.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Philadelphia County, Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have listened to both sides, and I think it was an excellent articulation of my frustration in moving to adjourn until tomorrow, because in essence, what I was feeling and what the people of Pennsylvania are feeling is that when you tell me to shut up and no more conversation, then what you're saying is that you're going to have your way regardless of who else might disagree with you. And in response to that, I said, move to adjourn until tomorrow, hoping that between now and tomorrow, when we come in the session, that you will reconsider taking a position, and I understand that there's some precedent for cutting debate off, but because you slap me don't mean that you just keep slapping me. At some point, the dignity of every member needs to be honored and need to be respected. So just because something happened in December and because somebody happened last month doesn't mean, what are we really saying to young people? You do wrong, but keep on doing the wrong? At some point, you got to draw a line in the sand. And so to that end, Mr. Speaker, and I would say that moving to adjourn is really doing the same thing that you have done. The same thing that you have done. What you have just said, that there would be no debate, there would be no discussion. And out of my frustration, I stood and moved to adjourn. What that's really doing is what you already started. But I'm going to be bigger than doing that to you by moving to adjourn. And so to that end, I withdraw the motion to adjourn, and I move to lay it on the table until tomorrow.
On the motion to adjourn, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Delaware County, Representative Lentz. Will the gentleman restate his motion?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My motion was to withdraw the motion to adjourn and avoid doing to the minority party the same thing that they have done to the majority party. And I'd like to move that we table the conversation, just table the bill until...
Gentleman, Mr. Thomas, the question before the House...
Move to table House Bill 40.
It would be that move to table would be out of order. The previous question was moved on the legislation, so we would either call the vote, the immediate vote on that legislation, or adjourn the House.
Mr. Speaker, Clarification. Is it the
Gentlemen,
rule of the Speaker that a motion to table is out of order when next to a previous question? To a motion to...
Nothing else would be in order other than taking the roll on House Bill 40. So your motion would be out of order.
But Mr. Speaker, then the motion to adjourn is still on the table. It's still on the table.
Chair recognizes gentleman from Delaware County, Representative Lentz, on the motion to adjourn.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman will say his parliamentary inquiry.
The motion to move the previous question, as I understand it, cuts off any discussion of or debate on the merits of both amendments and the underlying bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that would include whether or not amendments are germane or relevant to the underlying bill.
That's correct.
Does the fact that the minority leader spoke on the merits of the amendments and made an argument on the floor that they were not relevant, that things like closing the Florida loophole, which allows criminals to get permits to carry, is not relevant?
Mr. Speaker.
Does that invite a response and the opportunity to respond?
Well, I don't think the gentleman, Mr. Smith, referred specifically to your amendment as being out of order. He did refer to various amendments being out of order, and the Speaker, if they would have been considered yesterday on this floor, would have ruled on an individual basis on each one of those amendments as to whether or not they were in order or out of order. We never got to that point. So his characterization is somewhat correct. It was a ruling that the Speaker had made on a dual title bill on single subjects just 2 weeks ago. And that same issue could have been raised on a number of amendments that were filed to House Bill 40 yesterday. So his general characterization was correct. I don't think he said anything specific to any specific amendment.
Well, does the fact that he made, in fact, in essence, made an argument, isn't that engaging in debate after he made a motion to shut off debate?
That's true, but I granted latitude to the two leaders to make their arguments to the House.
Just briefly on the motion.
On the motion to adjourn, the gentleman is recognized.
It seems to me that as a result of this decision to shut off all discussion, all debate, any argument whatsoever of the merit of what's before the House, we have now, in essence, just gotten one side of the story. And therefore, I think the motion to adjourn is appropriate, and I support it.
Chair thanks the gentleman. On the motion to adjourn, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Montgomery County, Representative Shapiro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in favor of this motion to adjourn. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the gentleman across the aisle from Lancaster, supported by the gentleman, the minority leader from Jefferson, who made the motion today, asked this House to take a procedural step to allow the voice of all members to be heard through the amendment process. And I joined the minority in their effort to ensure that their voice would be heard. Later that evening, and then today, the minority party stands up and leads an effort to shut off debate over an issue that may or may not have the votes to pass, but is certainly something that this House ought to be able to consider. Now, Mr. Speaker, for what it's worth, I'm for the underlying bill. I have voted for it several times, and I would vote for it again. But it is unfair, Mr. Speaker. In fact, I believe it's got a tinge of hypocrisy from the minority leader to suggest in one night we should debate and the next night we should not debate. Mr. Speaker, we were sent here to debate. And I agree with the previous speaker from Delaware County. If we are not afforded the opportunity to debate tonight, This House should adjourn. We should debate it tomorrow, and every point of view should be aired on this House floor. We should support the gentleman from Philadelphia's motion, and we should adjourn this House and have a full and fair debate tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.